The year is 2005. You're leafing through the newest edition of Pony magazine. Beige, smiling preteens stare back at you, laughing at you with their double-barrel last names and their French plats. Poppy, Paige, Tilly, Bryony. You are infinitely more deserving of a pony than they are. Your Briar stable can attest to that. As you're turning the pages, something stands out. You brush your waist-length hair behind your ear to get a better look. Is that an advert for a video game? Poppy, Paige, Tilly, Bryony. I'm coming for you. Pippa Funnell, the Stud Farm Inheritance, or
Alexandra Ledermann 5 L'héritage du Haras,
as it was called in France, was developed by the French game studio Lexis Numérique and was released by Ubisoft in 2005. To save us from getting too stuck in the weeds, horse games from this era would be released in different countries under different names and would usually be numbered as if they were sequels, even though they would have nothing to do with the game before it or after it. In the home country of France, these games would be associated with Alexandra Ledermann, the French show jumper. In the UK, they would be associated with the British eventer Pippa Funnell. That's how I know these games best, because doy. And in Germany, you might know them under the German dressage rider Nicole Uphoff, or the
Abenteuer auf dem Reiterhof
series. The footage I'll be using comes from the US version of the game, Saddle Up, with Pippa Funnell, Champion Dreams. I can see why they got shortened to Horses going forwards in the US, because, wow, what a title. Lexis Numérique began making children's puzzle video games in the late 1990s. By their closure in 2014, they partnered with major corporations through their interactive communication agency and branched into various game genres. From what I can tell, they've never really bragged about their Alexandra Ledermann series, despite the fact that they have made so many of these games. Their first equestrian game, Saddle Up Time to Ride, was released in 2003. This game lays the foundation for what we're going to be working with looks and gameplay-wise. There are some definite improvements over time in the animation, especially in the next game, in my opinion, but this is kind of what we're going to be working with until 2007 with Pippa Funnell Ranch Rescue. Yes, the horses look crazy, but compared to other video game horses of the time, I'm going to cut them some slack. About this much. Before this series, horse games would usually focus on jumping or racing, and there wouldn't really be much of a story. In an interview with Ledermann from 2020, she says that she was approached by Ubisoft during the 2000 Sydney Olympic season. She says, "They turned to me because they wanted the most publicised rider in France to become the image of a video game they were planning to launch." I also found a press release from 2005 from Pippa Funnell and the then marketing director for Ubisoft, John Parks, in which he says, "This is a game that can appeal to a wide range of people, even those who may not have played video games before." Funnell then says, "It's great to see something I enjoy doing immortalized in a video game, and hopefully it will enable lots of people to get interested in horse riding and eventing." So I think the partnership made sense and likely boosted interest for people that had never played video games and would perhaps be looking for more of a realistic horse riding simulator than they would be a puzzle adventure game. If all three women went into this hoping to convert the masses into horse girls, I think that's a job well done. History lesson over, time for the plot. Or lack thereof. Pippa Funnell, the Stud Farm Inheritance, is an adventure/puzzle/pet care game that follows Estelle Beaumont as she inherits a stud farm, surprisingly, from her dead great-aunt Patricia. 19-year-old Estelle has been studying abroad in France and has been asked to come back to Appleton, which looks very French, at the request of her great-aunt's solicitor, Jeremy Scrivener. Upon being informed that Estelle is her great-aunt's only living relative, which implies that the entire rest of her family is dead, jovial sex pest Jeremy Scrivener tells her that there are several clauses in the will. In order to become the full owner of the estate, Estelle needs to prove that she is an accomplished horsewoman and someone who just loves horsies. If Estelle can prove herself to Jeremy by competing in dressage, cross-country and show jumping competitions, he will grant us access to more areas of the estate and presumably money, which we can renovate and upgrade as we see fit. Upon travelling to the stud farm for the first time, we meet Davy. Davy has been living on the stud farm with his younger sister Rose, who is a woman in STEM. Jeremy tells us rather nonchalantly that their parents died in a fire 8 years ago. We get confirmation later on that the fire did happen at the stud farm, so these poor kids are just living at the site of their parents' tragic demise. Davy reluctantly helps us get started on the farm and shows us the raggedy run-through mare we have. He's kind of rude to Estelle at the beginning, but I don't blame him because he's been looking after our dying relative while we've been swanning around in France, living it up. Grooming consists of brushing her little body and picking her little feet and picking up the poopy. As a child, I was enthralled by this, and you probably were too if you were a shut-in that had no life. But as an adult with a completely rotted attention span and the knowledge that these mechanics are going to crop up in 99.9% of horse games going forwards, this is tedious. Yet at the same time, I refuse to do it badly because I don't want to hurt the horse's feelings. It occurred to me when I was playing these games that it's not surprising that I have such a hard time relaxing as an adult. The games that I would play for fun involved busy work and chores and arbitrary time limits and having to take care of things that don't really exist. There are 16 horses in total, and by the end of the game you will have 8, which is too many horses for one person. During my first playthrough on normal, I got these horses. On my second playthrough on easy, I got these horses. With our pony tight, pony clean, pony fresh, we try our first dressage course with Davy's astute tutelage.
Come on, just a little more effort.
The moves are questionable, but an effort was made. B-. That's generous. C+. C. Next, Estelle is tasked with riding back to Appleton to retrieve her lost luggage. That has not been mentioned at any point before this. If the airline has the capability to send it to the post office, surely they could just send it directly to Estelle at the estate, but I digress. Davy doesn't have a car, so we have to ride to the town. As a kid, I was playing this game once a week for about an hour, so the backwards and forth didn't seem half as tedious as it does now. And also it was an opportunity for me to pretend that I was riding the horsey and that we were going on adventures together and building our friendship. But it's a reoccurring theme in the Lexus Numerique games that traveling the world on horseback just isn't that fun. In later games, it's easier just to get off the horse and run around on foot. Anyway, we retrieve our luggage from the local shop owner, Molly Catchpole, and she tells us that the village is a ghost town, hence the spooky Silent Hill fog. Like a lot of rural towns, my hometown included, the median age is about 84, and all the young people leave before the Tories can suck their blood. But Molly's heard about a new development happening in the area, and she's excited for what it might bring to the region. Ooh, exposition. We ride home, and the second we walk in the door, we get another call from Jeremy asking us to ride back to the village. Once we get there, after changing into a hip and happening new outfit, or impulsively cutting our bangs if we choose, Jeremy tells us that we've earned the next upgrade on the farm. I will say, the wording on the upgrades is quite confusing. Jeremy says that it will take 2 weeks for the upgrades to happen, but the screen says this, which to me implies something bad's gonna happen. Next, we have to tackle a cross-country and a show jumping course. They both use the same game mechanics, where at a trot and canter you can jump high, and then in gallop, gallop 2, and turbo gallop, you can jump long. If your horse gets too tired, you have to stop and take a little rest. After slaying the training courses, Jeremy tells us that we need to win a local competition to unlock the next part of the estate. And we're rewarded with a new horse after completing the training courses. Of course, we win the next competition and we're given another horse. I don't know where he's getting these horses from. You're supposed to revisit these training courses with each new horse to make sure that they're at the right level for the next competition, but every horse that you're given is already at the right level and they already know the dressage moves that you need for the next competition, so there's not really any incentive to go back to these courses. Back at the stud farm, Davy's sister Rose gives us a special ring that Patricia had given to her. Supposedly, Patricia loved this ring, but just couldn't bring herself to wear it. We meet with Jeremy again, and he tells us about the next competition. We are informed that we need a special saddle to compete in this. Rose and Davy tell Estelle about a mysterious saddler Patricia used to talk about. But his shop has been mysteriously closed for a mysterious amount of years. Mysteriously. Davy suggests that we should snoop through our dead great-aunt's stuff to find out more information. In doing so, we find a love letter from someone called Harry. The letter reads that Harry asked Patricia's father for her hand in marriage, but he said no because he was a poor. Then we find a strategically placed business card bearing the name Harry Randall and a picture of a building in Appleton. Could these be the same Harrys? Does this mean that the ring that Rose gave us was the engagement ring Harry gave to Patricia? We find Harry in the village and harass him about his dead ex-girlfriend and the fact that he will never find joy again because he's a broke, crusty bitch. He tells us to bog off until we show him the engagement ring, and his heart instantly softens. We explain how much Patricia loved that ring. The fact that she held on to the ring, didn't contact him even though she lived a few minutes away, is enough to inspire him to open the saddlery again and give us a free saddle. Once we return to the stud farm, we get a call from a Mr. Vincent Blacklock after Jezza passed our number along. Bearing in mind, we are 19 years old, and he is our lawyer, so... Vincent is a real estate developer, and he's promising the villagers of Appleton a brand new green tourist centre that combines ecology with luxury accommodation. We get to register for the competition, saddle in hand, but oh no, how are we going to get there? We have to ride everywhere on our horse. We can't possibly do that before a competition. They're going to get tired. Davy says that we do have a horse box, but he's lost the keys.
Oh dear, what am I going to do?
That's your problem.
Is he still paying insurance on that? Even though it's just sitting there? No wonder he's broke. Then Rose tells us that there is a set of spare keys down the well. For reasons, so we find a rope and a magnet to get them out. Cut to the next competition. We toast the fools. We get a new horse. And we get a new upgrade for the stud farm. Vincent contacts us again and tells us that we need to discuss matters in person. Estelle doesn't hear his address, but we hear the address. How does she not hear it when we can read what the address is? But she does hear that the door code is the first 6 digits to its phone number. Also, 1471 that should go, come on. We ask Davy if he knows where to find Vincent Blacklock, and he gets all pissy about it.
Do you think I've got time to make new acquaintances with all the work I've got to do at the stud farm? Go and ask in the village.
Interesting. After consulting with the villagers, they tell us that Vincent has been buying up land in the area and that he dresses oddly. We use the phone book in town to find his address and his phone number, and Estelle literally rips the page out of the public phone book. I remember when I was a kid, I stared at this in disbelief, thinking that they were expecting me to be able to read that tiny writing. We follow the signposts to his estate and we pay him a visit. Vincent tells us that in order to build his new project, he needs access to a large amount of land and a water reserve. So his plan is to buy the estate from us so that he can gain access to this land and also help us out of dire financial straits. Estelle is enraged by this very reasonable proposition. Vincent says that if she's not going to give this land up willingly, then he is going to have to resort to dirty tactics. Vincent claims to have a property deed for a piece of land on the Grange Meadows estate. With him allegedly owning this piece of land, we can't build on it. Thus, the stud farm will fall into financial ruin and we will be forced to sell. He tells us to think about how we want to proceed, so we leave in a huff and enjoy the 3-hour ride back to Appleton. I timed it and it's 6 minutes, but it feels like forever. We talk to Davy and he supports selling the stud farm because he thinks it's a waste of time and cannot be saved. He wants to leave the stud farm with Rose as soon as he can because our great aunt didn't leave them enough money to live off. He's moments away from financial ruin and we're out playing with our ponies. We ask Jeremy what he thinks, and he says that Vincent has been promoting his new project in the region, but that he's bound by professional secrecy and can't give us any more details. Speaking of professional secrecy, this is the man who gave our phone number to Vincent in the first place, so get bent, Jeremy. Estelle tells Jeremy that Vincent's claiming to own a piece of land that would block further development of the stud farm, and Jeremy says that he thinks the land does belong to us/Patricia. Isn't it literally his job to know? And that he thinks that Patricia let a local stock breeder take ownership of the land to graze his sheep. Jeremy says that he doesn't know much about this guy. Again, literally his job to know what is going on with this estate. This town isn't exactly bustling. I don't know what else he's busy doing. However, Jeremy does have an article with this man in it for some reason. We can recognize that it's the villager that we've seen before, who from a distance looks like he's wearing like a cool little romper with his legs out, but upon finding Peter, he tells us that his sheep have escaped. He tells us that his dog has eaten Chemgrow, a chemical fertilizer that was suspiciously found in the area. Suspicious. Without Peter's dog, there's only one thing we can do. It is done. Anyway, after herding his sheep whilst he stands there and does nothing, Peter tells us that the land does in fact belong to the estate, and that Patricia had given him ownership of the land to graze the sheep. Conveniently, he has a copy of the deed on him right this moment, because he was just about to go to the Rosses about the dog poisoning. We take this copy of the real deed to Jeremy, and he's conveniently invited Vincent there as well. We show them the deed, and Jeremy verifies that it is legit, but does not question why Vincent has a fake deed in the first place. I feel like that's probably a very serious crime, but Jeremy has proven that his attention lies elsewhere. Competition time again. We win because, shocking no one, I am a tryhard. Once back at the stables, Rose tells us that someone has set the horses free and that they are running amok. We see a man leaving the stud farm on a quad bike and we have to catch him. How hard could that be? I just fail on the quad bike bit. I don't know where to stop and catch him. I know this is bold from whipping my hair out trying to catch the dude on the quad bike. Davy's fault. I know it's him on the quad. What the hell? I too am sure of it. Also, they picked the perfect horse for me to use. It's not his fault. I'm blind. I only raised it once. Obviously, what you said to do about the man on the quad bike doesn't work. I can't seem to get the little rat, and it's so frustrating. I get so close, then he's guy on my last nerve. I am going to explode. I've tried, but I keep failing. Here comes the explosion. Anyway, tears streaming down your face, you finally catch him, and guess what? It's Davy! He tells you that the horses have probably run to the riverbank, and that you should find them before something bad happens. He'll explain why he betrayed you later. Chop chop, get on with it. Once you find all the horses, you get a pretty disgruntled call from Davy asking you to come back to the stud farm. This game does a good job at teaching young girls that men truly do have the audacity. By the way, all this running around is done on your horse that has the worst endurance. When we eventually return, Davy tells us that Rose is missing. She went to go look for the horses. Davy does say that it's all his fault, so king status restored. If this game gives young girls the unrealistic expectation that a sick elderly relative is going to die and leave them a horse farm, it also sets up the unrealistic expectation that men will take responsibility for their actions in any way. We get another 10-minute timer to find Rose in the spooky forest that is consumed by Silent Hill fog, but doesn't have very many trees for a forest, I'll be honest. This part of the game has scary music and there are crows cawing dramatically. Rose calls out the closer you get to her, and we get to find her before Pyramid Head strikes. Back at the farm, Davy finally explains himself. He says that Vincent has been paying him to make Estelle's life miserable so that she will up and leave. He says that Patricia didn't leave him enough money, and he's worried that if anyone finds out, they'll take Rose off of him because he can't afford to take care of her. Obviously, Estelle doesn't care about that, and she only cares about the stud farm, so she says that she'll be able to increase his salary if the farm starts doing better, and he won't have to resort to a life of crime. Davy says, okay, and everything's fine now. Competition time again. In this game for children, I am trying my absolute best at all times, so we win. This is the first competition that actually has people watching, so that's nice. We meet with Jeremy again, and he tells us that we need more public support for the stud farm. They need to believe that our success will also be their success, and that we could bring fame and fortune to Appleton. We can do this by harassing everyone in town and telling them about how evil Vincent is. We don't actually mention any of the bad stuff he actually did, like poisoning a dog or paying my employee to stage a coup against me. Molly is the only villager who's still pretty horny for Vincent, but she says that her son applied for a job at his new eco-resort, but that they didn't hear anything back after he applied. It's quaint that that was a red flag back then and not just how major businesses operate when you apply for a job these days. We ask Keith Burgess, the vet. I don't know who this guy is. I don't know. This is the first time he shows up. I have no idea who this man is. And he says that Vincent has always done business with the chemical industry hotshots. Where were you before, Keith? Davy suggests that we sneak into Vincent's office while he confronts him about being his lackey. Davy gives us very vague instructions about entering via the back where there are no cameras, and Estelle suggests that we approach by the beach. As you've seen in this game footage, what beach? Where could there possibly be a beach? What is she talking about? After riding around aimlessly for hours, you look up a game guide and it tells you to go to the riverbank. At the riverbank, we find a wire fence, and Estelle suggests finding wire cutters from the stud farm to break in. A crime, but we do it. Why not at this point? Enough crazy stuff has happened. We cut the fence, we sneak in. It took me 4 minutes and 43 seconds to ride from the riverbank back to the stud farm. Please, 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 game, please. We overhear Davy and Vincent arguing. Davy threatens to go to the police for the money that Vincent hasn't paid him. Could you go to the police if you were paid to commit a crime but then not paid? Use your brain, Davy. Come on, Davy. I know you're going through a lot, but come on. Some common sense in that nut. We get 2 minutes in Vincent's office to find evidence of his evilness. He has a hidden safe behind his bookcase, and we open it using a code we found on the piano. The entire bookcase moves to reveal a secret room with an elaborate 3D model of the chemical plant he's planning to build. Estelle grabs a copy of like a pamphlet or something that she's going to show the villagers to prove that he's up to no good and that he's lying. It's supposed to be a fertilizer factory, but I feel like this leaflet implies that it's going to be like an energy plant or something like that. I don't know. Upon showing the leaflet that we stole to the villagers, Vincent is evicted toot sweet with their pitchforks. And Jeremy tells us that we can continue building the stud farm because we now have the support we needed. All it took was breaking into a man's house. We get a threatening call from Vincent that this won't be the last you hear of him, but it is. To congratulate us, the villagers come together and give us another horse. We have 7 horses now. That's too many horses. Jeremy tells us that the last thing we need to do is organize a big competition on our own land, which is literally what we did right at the very beginning of the game. To unlock the buildings that we haven't renovated yet on the stud farm, we need to redo the competitions to unlock them one by one. We do need to get a new saddle before we can register for our own competition though, so we have to ride back to the village again. Once we arrive at Harry's shop, we overhear him having a conversation with Davy. Davy wants to give Estelle a gift to apologise for the crimes that he's committed against her. Harry intuits that Davy's got feelings for Estelle for some reason. Lord knows why. Harry offers to give Davy a saddle engraved with the Beaumont monogram, which he had originally designed to give to Patricia, and says that times have changed and that Paws can marry riches now. We barge in mid-conversation and graciously accept the new saddle.
Wow-wee!
And begin the slog of redoing all these competitions. After renovating the other areas of the stud farm, we can finally compete. Creating your own competition, registering your own competition, and then winning your own competition is quite a power play. Estelle is a menace. We get another lovely call from Pippa Funnell telling us that she's registered to take part in our competition. We let her go because she says that we both have a long way to travel. What? It's literally on our land. What are you talking about? As long as you come in the top 3, the game says you win, so you don't really need to try that hard if you don't want to. We return triumphant, and Jeremy gives us another horse. We also get a congratulatory call from Vincent, and he commends our determination. Estelle is instantly won over and says that maybe he isn't so bad after all, and that we all just need to play fair. What are you talking about? What? Back at the farm, Rose tells us that Davy is waiting for us in the living room. He confesses his feelings for Estelle, and she admits that she is deeply in love with him too. He asks if Estelle could ever love him despite him being only a groom, and she says yes. Because, and I quote, he will be useful to her. He says that he will stay at the farm with Rose after all, and that we can all live happily ever after. You can still train all of your horses and continue upgrading parts of the stud farm that you hadn't got to yet. You can talk to the villagers and they'll congratulate you, but that's the end of the story. There is a side quest that you unlock once you upgrade the vet's office, where he asks you to go find various plants that you can feed the horses. I always forget about this because I never upgrade the vet's office really to begin with, so I'll walk in and be like, ooh, this is nice. I haven't been here before. What's this? Ooh, so shiny. So yeah, that's it. After
several
hours of gameplay, we did it. Good job. It is fun to rag on these games now, and it's true that they can be kind of boring as an adult, but as a kid, I was captivated. When riding back and forth, I would imagine what my horse was thinking and what they were feeling, and I would make sure that none of them felt neglected and that they all got equal amounts of my attention. First and foremost, these games are aimed at preteens. So lazy game design does leave a lot of room for your imagination to do the heavy lifting. I do want to give credit where credit is due though, and say that this game is unlike anything I'd ever played before at the time. It felt like I had a game that, arguably, looked like a real video game, with no Barbie pink or cartoon hair bows to be seen, and it had enough realistic horse stuff for it to feel like it was truly aimed at me. The game wasn't particularly gendered or patronizing or frou-frou. It felt like the game knew that I knew the difference between a chestnut and a bay, and it wasn't going to waste my time. Though, yes, they do make mistakes like that in this game and in all the other ones, but it's better than the "when does a pony become a horse" crap that you have to deal with as a horse girl. I do think John Park's quote about making a game for people that had maybe never played a video game before explains why these games still have some kind of staying power despite being pretty lackluster. I am positive that this was some girl's first foray into video games, and although I was a seasoned gamer, this was the first time that I'd played a video game that felt like it was actually aimed at my interest and not just my older brother's. That being said, I think there's an interesting paradox where games aimed at girls have traditionally been dumbed down and low effort and made for people who are perhaps less computer literate, with the assumption that girls don't play video games, so they need their little soft hands to be held. But because female-focused games are so hard to come by, the player base actually spans a broad age range, and because we're given absolute crumbs, these games are consumed so voraciously by these girls that they've turned into true gamers. Luckily, we are in a bit of a horse games renaissance right now, with all of the cool horse games being made by people that have had experience playing the terrible ones and that they actually have interest in the subject matter. I really hope that the hype around these games gets noticed by a larger studio and that the gaming industry as a whole will finally realize that this genre has legs. 4 of them to be precise. Get it? This has got 4 legs. Sometimes they have 3 legs and they give them robo legs. Have you seen that? Horses with robot legs? Or they kill them.